All right, thank you for confirming. Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Manish, and I'm honored to welcome you all to this two-day online legal webinar hosted by the Legal Quorum. Today is the first day of our event titled Equity in Action Understanding and Applying Gender Neutral Legal Frameworks for Harassment. Over the next 2 days, we'll be talking into this essential topic, exploring frameworks that promote a safe, inclusive, and fair environment for all. Before we start, a few housekeeping notes. Our session today will last approximately an hour. We'll have a dedicated Q&A session at the end. If you have questions during the presentation, please use the chat box and we'll address them at the end. Also, Ayan, is it possible for us to record the meeting? All right, thank you. So the session will be recorded and shared with you afterward. And make sure you keep your microphones muted during the presentation to minimize the distractions. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce our esteemed speaker for today, Advocate Sakshi Kothari. Sakshi ma'am is an accomplished advocate at the Madhya Pradesh High Court, and she's an assistant professor at the Indore Institute of Law. She holds a BPA LLB degree from MT University and an LLM in International Trade and Investment from Gujarat Maritime University. Her extensive legal knowledge is paired with practical experience, having participated in numerous training programs and seminars. Sakshi ma'am is passionate about fostering a robust and inclusive legal framework, making her a perfect speaker for today's discussion. So please join me in welcoming Sakshi Kothari ma'am to lead today's session. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Manish, for introducing me. Hope I am audible and my screen is visible.
Yes, ma'am, you're audible and your screen is visible too.
Okay, so today's topic we will be discussing about the gender neutral legal frameworks for harassment, and tomorrow we will be discussing about the POSH Act 2013. So today the overview is the introduction, understanding the gender neutral laws, the types of harassment, the global examples of gender neutral laws which have been implemented, what are the challenges that the India has been facing for having an approach for the gender neutral laws, what are the case laws that are providing such a gender neutrality approaches in India, recommendations followed by conclusion. So the first is the introduction, which we have been dealing with what is an harassment. It means any unwelcome behavior, verbal, physical, non-verbal, which creates a hostile, intimidating, or offensive environment. It can occur in the workplaces, public spaces, online platforms, and within the institutions. Whenever we are talking about the harassment, we have to look into the two main ingredients. The first ingredient is a latent maxim, which is known as quid pro quo, which means this for that or consideration for consideration. Like, let us understand through an example. If there is a male boss, under him there is a female employee working, right? And the male employee is asked for a sexual favors from a female employee, that if you sleep with me, I will get a promotion done for your role, right? So this is considering to be a quid pro quo. Like, if that female employee is sleeping with that male boss, so she might get a promotion, right? So this is the quid pro quo consideration in which we have been considering that the harassment has been caused. The first main ingredient is the quid pro quo. Second, we will be talking about the toxic or a hostile environment. How does that relate to the harassment? Like, in various organizations, there might be a person coming from abroad working in the India culture, right? So there is various diverse culture in India. So he might not be able to adopt that culture in India, right? So in that case, you have to help that person to adopt that culture, not even neglecting him or taking him to the isolation, right? So these are not your basic criteria as a human being, that you should not treat that person in your Indian community. You should treat him like a same community so that he also feel comfortable in that workplace. So the first ingredient that we studied is the quid pro quo, and second ingredient is the hostile or a toxic environment that are being created in our workplaces. Second, we are talking about the types of harassment. The first one is the workplace harassment. It means any abusing, threatening, spreading false rumors, or humiliating someone. Now, let us understand through an example. If there is Mr. A and Miss B, they both went on a coffee date, right? So they were both were having a normal coffee and they were having their office discussion in that place. Now, in the meantime, there one of the employee working in that organization see them that they both are having coffee. So he make an assumption that they might be having dating each other or they might be in a relationship, right? Next day when he goes to that workplace, he spread a false rumor about Mr. A and Miss B that they both were having coffee. I think they are been dating each other. So this is kind of a false rumors that are being spread in the organization or any of the workplaces. Without the consent of both the persons, you have been spreading such a false rumors about anyone is restricted to the workplace harassment. Also, in the Delhi High Court case, there has been a case regarding the extended workplace. Now, how can we understand the extended workplace? Like, if there is an organization in which there is a dinner party organized for Diwali, right? After 7 p.m., all the employees as well as the employers are requested to come to a dinner party. So they all went to a dinner party. So they all were having their food. In that situation, there was an harassment happened with a woman. Like any of the male employee or a senior employee was trying to come in a physical contact with a woman, right? So will it be considered to the workplace harassment or not? Yes, it will be considered to the workplace harassment, though the High Court has given a judgment for the extended workplace because the CEO of the company has put up a notice in the organization by stating that if you all are being invited in that dinner party, so he will be responsible if anything is happening in that party, right? So we have to consider that the extended workplace can also amount to in workplace harassment. Second one is the psychological. By the word itself, you can understand it. Any emotional trauma that a person has been facing, isolation from the group, denial to contact, or facing such type of a humiliation that is not considerable to be faced in that workplace or in any of the organization. What happens? There might be persons who might not be calling it by its own name. They would be calling by any of the other names. So the person is not liking it, and he might go in the psychological or the emotional trauma about that thing, right? You never know that which of the employee has been going in that trauma. So this is also one type of an harassment which has been playing a role in the workplaces. Third, we are talking about the sexual harassment. Even under the POSH.
Sharat Tripathi, could you please mute?
Thirdly, if we talk about the sexual harassment under our POSH Act, there is a widened definition of the sexual harassment. But as we all know, that there has been a new criminal bill passed of the BNS 2023, in which the under section 75 is talking about the sexual harassment, which states that which can happen anywhere. It might be a physical contact showing pornography to any female person or to anyone showing such type of in contact which is creating an obscenity, right? So these type are being considered as in sexual harassment, which can happen most common in the schools, which have a behavior of a sexual nature, is to be considered as in sexual harassment. Fourth, we have been talking about the cyber harassment, in which we can also involve the cyber stalking, cyber bullying, like there might be a pattern of threats which are being followed, right? And you have been protecting the minors from saving them not to use online contents, right? So these are the cyber harassment which have been very common nowadays, that a person might use your photographs to create some type of an different photograph from that. So this is also amounting to an harassment. Fifth type is the religious harassment. By the word itself, you can understand it's like practice to choose a specific or forcing someone for the involuntary conversions to any of the religion is also amounting to the religious harassment. Like for an example, there is a Muslim boy who want to marry a Hindu girl, right? So in that case, the Hindu girl is not a Muslim. He is trying to create such type of a conversion to that Hindu girl, that when you will convert your religion into the Muslim, then only I can marry you. Though it is in the coercion or it is in the forcefully making that woman to convert the religion and then marry. So this is also amounting to the religious harassment. If we talk about the racial, it means discriminately the victim differences or relucting to work with them. Like there might be any British person from the abroad came to India working in your organization, you are not feeling comfortable. So it might be a racial discrimination or the racial harassment that has been happening. That you are not allowing the person to come to your own space, right? In your workplace. So these type are also been amounting to the harassment which have been commonly seen in the organizations. If we talk about the verbal, name calling, derogatory remarks, offensive jokes which are leading to the toxic environment. You are not calling that person by its own name, creating such type of different names for that person that the person is feeling insulted in front of other peers. So this is amounting to the verbal harassment. If we talk about the non-verbal, there might be in an organization, there might be a group of 4 to 5 people different, 4 to 5 people different, 2 people would be sitting, right? So in that cases, what happens? Like 4 to 5 people have been talking in their creating such type of posters in their shared spaces, which is making a discomfort to the other employees. Though they 5 people are very comfortable in that organization, but the other persons have been facing such type of a discomfort from that pictures or that posters or the drawing that they have been sharing, which is quite inappropriate in nature. So these type are also amounting to the non-verbal harassment. Now we are talking about the gender neutral laws. The first one we talk about the POSH Act. In the preamble, you can read it that it protects both boys and girls from the sexual abuse of the children of any gender, which can be the victim of the sexual offences. Under there has been a definition clause of child in which they are creating a gender neutrality approach. Then it can be either a boy or a girl, right? Stating it with an example of the case law, Rakesh versus State of Delhi 2023. What happened in this case? There was a minor girl of 7 years old, and Rakesh has put up a short gun on that minor girl because he wants some type of financial support from that girl, right? So, from his father, he really wanted that some amount of the money if I get, if I keep a gun on this minor girl. So, in this case, what happened? The court held that the petition is quite insensitive, especially considering the trauma that a minor victim would be facing, right? In this, the Rakesh claimed and Rakesh contended that he was not harming, he just needed a money, right? He just needed a money from his livelihood. He was not harming that minor girl, though that gun was not having any bullet in it. He claimed like that. But the court held that the petition is quite insensitive because we can't bring the minor victim for the cross examination that what was the situation happening, right? So it has been subjected to such a further psychological distress that the minor girl would have been facing, and there were being a lack of substantive ground to prove that there was such type of a situation happening. So, court said that it will be very painful for a girl to answer, and in this case, the law was being misused. Second, if we talk about the Transgender Persons Act 2019, which is talking about the protection and rights of the transgender, and this act has been passed with the intention of bringing a gender equality by prohibiting any type of a discrimination against any person, providing them with equal opportunity. Further, if we talk about these sections which have been dealing, if we talk about the section number 6 and 7, which is talking about the certificate of identity, which is adding as a valid documentation for the PAN card. Also, there has been a case laws. In the case law section, we will be discussing about the Transgender Protection Act 2019. Third, we are talking about the POSH Act. Tomorrow we will be dealing in detail what is the POSH Act. But in brief, I will like to tell you that it is protecting the women from the sexual harassment. But though the preamble is stating a sexual harassment, but over here we are talking about the gender neutrality approach. Now the POSH Act is only talking about the protection of the women. Now how can we deal with the gender neutrality in this law? So what happens in various organizations? there has been a POSH policy being made, drafted, in which the approach has been gender neutral, because nowadays the men are also facing the same type of an harassment that are being faced by the women, right? So this can't be said that the both are being facing. Even if we talk about the LGBTQ also, they are also facing some type of an harassment at the work. So these post policies are to be created or drafted in such a manner that it is having an impact of a gender neutrality in that organization. It depends to each and every organization. In some of the organization there might be only female employees, then why they will bring a gender neutrality approach in their posh policy, right? So they will opt for only female employees, as the posh policy is only protecting for the females. But there might be some of the organization in which only the men and the women have been working, right? So in that case, they are approaching for the gender neutrality approach. Also, both have been facing such type of a sexual assault differently, but it has been said that the woman has to face a social stigma, because for the men's we have been lacking for the laws regulating their sexual nature or the behaviors of the men that has to be made. The laws are to be implemented in such a manner that the behaviors of the men are to be changed, or such norms are to be there that the behaviors of the men can be regulated. If we talk about that it will be biologically impossible for a woman to ask a man to rape, right? Always you have been listening about that the man has raped so and so girl or a woman, right? But can a woman ask for a man to rape, right? In that case, what can we say? That if a woman tells a man that he must have a sex with her, then this argument is already making stronger that the men are being stronger. They can commit rape while the woman cannot commit rape. So these are some of the highlights given under the POSH Act. Tomorrow we will be dealing further with the internal committee procedure, how this has been set up, how the companies have been drafting their annual report, how they have been talking about the disclosures, how the confidentiality has been maintained, how there has been a safe reporting mechanism. So tomorrow we will be dealing about this all. Now we talk about Bharatiya न्याय Sanhita 2023, our IPC, recognizing the e-crimes and addressing them with the provisions. Like if we talk about the section number 74, like the woman which is intended to outrage her modesty. In that definition, if you read, it is written whosoever. But when you read the sexual harassment, it is written a man who is committing an harassment, right? In the rape definition, also, if you will see a man who is committing a rape. So these are not creating a gender neutrality approaches in our society, but having only for the protection for the woman perspective. But if we talk about the section number 124, which is talking about the asset attack, right? So in that case, if you read the provision, bare provision of that IPC provision of 124, then it is saying whosoever causing a grievous hurt by the use of an asset. So it is a gender neutrality approach in it, like stating whosoever can be any person. It may be either a boy or a girl, right? If we talk about the Uniform Civil Code, Article number 44 of our Constitution has been dealing with the Uniform Civil Code. Also in India, it has been implemented in Goa based on the Portuguese Civil Code of 1807, that the people belonging to all the religion in the Goa are subjected to the same laws like the marriage, divorce, succession. It is using a gender inclusive language in it. Lastly, if we talk about the Constitution of India, the Article number 14 is talking about the equality before the law, equal protection of law. Article 15 is talking about the discrimination, prohibiting discrimination on the race, caste, religion, right? So these are creating such type of an equal treatment in the similar situation, regardless of the gender of any of the individuals. If we talk about Article number 16 of our Constitution, which is also ensuring that there is no discrimination regarding the employment in the public sector only due to one's gender identity, which is also making it a gender inclusive in nature. So these are some of the gender neutral laws that the India has been adopting it for the betterment. Now, if we talk about the global examples, the first one I have mentioned over here is the US Civil Rights Act of in in the year of 2020, the Bosco versus Clayton case was being passed, in which the discrimination was being based on the sex, but the court interpreted that against all the genders, including men, women, transgender. Firstly, we have to understand the difference between a sex and a gender. A gender is something that the social and culture constructs that we have been seeing any person with a long hair, we have been assuming that she is a girl, right? If a person is wearing a shirt and pant, we are assuming that he is a man. So these are such type of a social and culture constant that we have been facing, that yes, we have been defining gender on a basis of our own perception. But when we talk about the sex, it is something biological in character. It might be either a male, female, or a intersex. So in this case, what happened, that the discrimination was based on the sexual orientation and the gender identity, but the decision expanded the understanding of the sex, and the court interpreted that all the genders are to be included in the men, women, or any of the transgender. Second, we are talking about the Equality Act of 2010, which is the UK law, including any unwanted behavior related to the protected characteristics, violating any person's dignity, creates hostile, degrading, or an offensive environment. Over here, the anti-discrimination law was being passed with the equal treatment for all and promoting an inclusive and equitable environment by ensuring that all the individuals have been protected against the harassment. It may be either on the basis of age, disability, gender reassignment, marriage, civil partnership, pregnancy, maternity, race, religion, belief, sex, or any of the sex orientation. So this created such type of a neutrality in their law by saying Equality Act of 2010 of the UK. Third, we are talking about the Sex Discrimination Act of 1984. Further, it was been amended in 2013, talking on the grounds of sexual orientation, gender identity, intersex status, and protecting all the genders from the discrimination on the basis of their employment, education, and accommodation. Furthermore, if we talk about the Canadian Human Rights Act, which is also talking about the gender identity or the expression, which is one of the prohibited ground for the discrimination. Germany is also having in German Act on the Equal Treatment 2006, Norway Equality Anti-Discrimination Act of 2017. Now we are talking about the challenges that the India has been facing for having a gender neutral laws in India. The first one is the culture norms and the biases, societal expectation, resistance due to the traditional gender roles, biasness which have been resisting in existing societies and the worldwide. Now let us understand through an examples that what we have been facing for having not and gender neutrality approaches in our laws, that you all might be traveling through a train, right? So you might be traveling with your parents. Whenever they see any transgender person coming and asking for the money, what does our parents do? Our parents say, "Beta, you should sleep so that they won't ask us for the money," right? Even though you should sleep or not sleep, that is not a consideration over here, but being a law student, you should educate that transgender that whether you should not beg like this in the trains or any of the public spaces. Even there have been such of an NGOs which have been supporting for your welfare, so you should know your rights, right? Even that person, you should educate him by your own knowledge that these are the NGOs which have been working in your state or in this religion or this territory. So in that case, you might break this barrier of the culture norms and the biases that we have been facing. Even at our homes also, there might be a made cup would be different from our own cups, right? If we are having a tea in that cup, our maid will not have a tea in that cup. There might be a different cup for her or him, right? So in that cases, we are not creating such type of an environment in our own spaces. Then how can you say that we have to make a gender neutrality approaches outside our houses, right? So these are some, if you start from your own spaces, you will start implementing such a gender neutrality approaches in your own spaces, then you can think about to bring a change in your society, right? Second is lack of awareness in the training. Like there has been not an insufficient understanding of the laws to the persons, they don't know about their rights. So there might be an awareness training from them, for them. Third is underreporting of the harassment, fear of retaliation, fear of not being taken seriously, culture silences. Like what happens in various of the organization if the female has been facing some type of a sexual harassment, she might not put up an application or she might not state her complaint regarding that harassment that she has been facing because she might be thinking that oh if I tell this complaint of the harassment in this organization they might resign me or they might terminate me from this organization, right? Or they might put a deduction in my compensation or any of the salary may be deducted in that cases. So these are also the challenges that we have been facing for not having a gender neutrality approaches because the harassment cases are not being coming up. Thirdly, if we talk about the legal and the policy gaps, clear guidelines, variation across the jurisdiction, inconsistent with the applications, enforced across the different regions, leading to the uneven protection. Now, what happens? There has been a person who have been migrating from one place to the another, right? So, if I am working in Gwalior and I am from another place. I am from Bind, right? And I am working in the Gwalior in any of the organizations, right? So in that organization, I have been facing such type of an harassment. So whether I will be going to the Gwalior High Court jurisdiction or to my native place jurisdictions, right? So in that cases, it has to be defined in such a manner that if there is any of the variation in your jurisdiction, it should be defined in your policy or it should be defined in your legal policy of the POSH that these are the jurisdictions that if a person has been facing any type of an harassment, he might go to that organization's state of jurisdiction. Like the organization has been working in the Madhya Pradesh, then the Madhya Pradesh High Court will be the jurisdiction for that. So this should be clear by spreading the awareness and the POSH trainings in that organization so that they will also get to know that where they can file a case for the harassment. Now we are talking about the case law Sakshi versus Union of India 1997, which was the matter concerning to the male rape victims in the gender neutral applications of the law commission, which later founded the way by stating 172nd report Priya Patel versus State of Madhya Pradesh 2006 that a woman cannot be said to have an intention to commit a rape. Like it will be very biologically impossible to state that a woman is asking a man to commit a rape, right? Third is the Nalsa case versus Union of India 2012, in which the transgender rights were being recognized and enjoying all the fundamental rights for the specific benefits in the education and the employment too. Vishaka guidelines, like the POSH Act, came into an enforcement in 2013 of 9th of December due to this case of Vishaka versus State of Rajasthan. Tomorrow we will be dealing in detail what the guidelines were given under this case. Last case is the Suresh Jaku versus Casey Jaku 1996, in which the Delhi High Court has highlighted that there is a need of protection for the male rape victims under the IPC, but the court iterated that the male victims were owed the same rights and the protection as the female victims for the same crime, without any restrictions to be made on their gender. So in this case, there were gender neutrality and gender inclusive language were given in this judgment by stating that the female victims and the male victims both have been facing the same type of an assault. Now we are talking about the recommendation. The first one is the training in the awareness programs that has to be done with the specialized training for the internal committee which has been set up in that organization. Regular workshop and the session should be conducted. Second, if we talk about the comprehensive policy design, like I already stated that the POSH policies in the organization should have a gender inclusive language so that even a male has been facing such type of an harassment, he can also get a relief or ensure justice in that case, access to the justice, right? Third is the safe reporting mechanism, accessibility, clear instructions on how to report and what to accept during the investigation process, protection against the retaliation, multi awareness for the reporting. Like if a woman has been facing such type of an harassment, how she should report to the HR, like due to which there has been forming of a digital tools in which the victim and the perpetrator names are not to be disclosed to the HR. It might only be disclosed during the time of an investigation or the inquiry procedure that has been set up. So these type of a helps of the tools will help them to be accessible for any of the sexual harassment that has been facing, right? Fourthly is the consistent enforcement, supporting the victims, clearly the consequences for the harassment. Like if a person has been harassing, he might be suspended from that organization, right? Or maybe suspended for a week, might be imposing any such type of an penalty to that person. So the inquiry procedure should be established in such a manner which should be conducted without any biasness. Like there may be a third party representative stating that he might not know the victim or the perpetrator, right? So in these cases the consistent enforcement is necessary. Lastly, we are talking about the conclusion. By concluding it, we can say that gender legal frameworks for the harassment laws ensuring the fairness, inclusivity, and equal protection for all the individuals, regardless of their gender identity or the expression. It helps to create a more equitable environment by acknowledging and addressing the unique challenges which have been faced by the men, women, transgender, gender fluid individuals. Gender neutral legal frameworks are not just about the compliances, but they are about creating a culture of safety, respect, and the empowerment. So, by concluding it, we can state that a gender neutral approach has been needed for our harassment laws. That whether a man has been facing or a woman has been facing, they both might be able to address their issues and help to create a gender inclusive in our languages with the safety, respect, and the empowerment. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you for the wonderful presentation, ma'am. We have now got some time for Q&A. If any one of you is having any question, just unmute yourself and ask. Or you can drop your questions in the chat box also. Okay, ma'am, are we allowed to share the PPT after the session?
Yes, yes.
Okay, we'll be sharing the PPT. If anyone have got any question, please ask. Okay, since there is no question from the participant, ma'am, can I ask a question?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so ma'am, in terms of legislation, I mean, how does India compare to other countries in terms of promoting and enforcing the gender neutral harassment laws?
See, if we talk about the POSH Act in the preamble, you can read that they have been talking about that India has been party to the UN Convention of the Elimination of All Forms of the Discrimination. So in this convention is not only talking about the protection of the women, but they are also talking about the protection of the men. Though India is also signatory to it, it is also requiring that if there is any of the forms of the discrimination which has been faced by any of the person can come under this convention for the elimination of all forms of discrimination. Apart from this, I already explained about the UK laws, US laws. So these are the approaches that the India can also take in further future to have a gender neutral laws. Though we can't say that all the laws are to be gender neutral in nature, but such laws in which the women are also been facing such type of harassment, or the men are also been facing, or any of the transgenders are also been facing. So if we talk about the sexual harassment, why it has always been written that men who has been committing an harassment to a woman, right? So in these cases, there might be such type of a gender neutrality that that whosoever been having an harassment. So in that we can talk about any of a man, girl child, or any of a woman, or any of the transgender person by stating a whosoever in that languages. Second, if in the rape cases also, if we see, there is always we mention a man who is committing a rape. Though it is very biologically impossible to state that it the woman is asking for a man to commit a rape. That's why there is not a gender neutrality approach in a rape definition. So this has to be included, or they can include a clause in it by stating that there might be such type of a mental harassment that the men who were be facing from any of the women. So this type of laws are to be implemented by considering the international laws, regulations, or the UN conventions in which the India is also signatory to it. So they can follow some amount of the approaches, not the full amount, but some amount of the approaches to our Indian culture.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for the answer, ma'am. Okay, so I would like to inform that since it is a 2-day legal webinar, you all are supposed to join tomorrow as well. And tomorrow we'll be sharing a feedback form. After filling it, we'll be issuing participation certificates to each of the participants. So, as we conclude day one, I would like to express our gratitude to Advocate Sakshi Kothari, ma'am, for her invaluable insights into the evolving landscape of gender neutral laws. Thank you for the session, ma'am. It was very informative and thought provoking. Thank you as well to each of the participants for actively participating in the webinar. We hope you found today's session beneficial and insightful. We look forward to having you all tomorrow as well. Before we go, I would like you all to turn on your camera so that we can just take a snapshot. Ayan, please take snapshots. Done. Okay, just take another one. Okay, thank you once again for joining us today. Have a wonderful day ahead and see you tomorrow for the day two. And once again, thank you, ma'am, for joining. We hope we'll have a great time tomorrow as well.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you everyone. Participants may leave the meeting.